Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen across the JAKIB Media YouTube network, riding out the storm down in South Philly at the NovaCare complex. Johnny Mac, as the team went back to work today inside the bubble, 11 days and counting to the countdown to kickoff, and Sunday, the 12th, when it all begins for real, down in Atlanta. John, it's time to populate the practice squad. Jalen Hurts spoke today. We'll have that story. I can't wait to ask you about your buddy Ed Kratz's article on Zach Ertz. I was so excited to read that Zach Ertz is here. His attitude is good. A lot of ground to cover in this report across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Welcome in, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, Krause, it was a big day because obviously Jalen Hurts spoke, and anytime the starting quarterback, who is the starting quarterback, but you're right, the headliner was Zach Ertz because we haven't gotten to speak to him the entire training camp. I think there was this uncertainty, and as Zach mentioned, there's been some apologies, and some bridges have been rebuilt, and everybody seems to be by it. He's going to be part of this team. And it's interesting because another friend of mine, Matt Lombardo, came out with a story that Minnesota, which was obviously looking for a tight end, ultimately traded for Chris Herndon from the New York Jets. They did, in fact, call the Philadelphia Eagles to try and get a tight end. They lost Irv Smith for the season to a torn meniscus in his knee. They did call the Eagles, and they called about Dallas Goedert. They didn't call about Zach Ertz. So the Eagles were talking about trade. This is where we are in this situation.
Did the Eagles take the call?
Oh, the Eagles took the call. Yeah, the Eagles took the call. And they probably asked for too much, and obviously Minnesota went in a different direction. But, man, this has been a soap opera. And now Zach Ertz, I think I've said it, pretty much from the start. He had a great training camp. He said he hasn't had more fun playing football. Seems very focused. And, he's been arguably the best skill position player they had. And I think when Nick Sirianni finally got him, remember the entire time since Nick Sirianni got this job, he was expecting not to have Zach Ertz. He was expecting he wasn't going to have him. Then nothing happened. Zach forced to show up at training camp because of the CBA, inside out shorts and all. Showed up, and all of a sudden Nick Sirianni started saying, oh, this guy's pretty good still. And then I think he became enamored with him and said, well, this is my best tight end. Let's move forward with Zach Ertz as my best tight end. And we'll see what happens. I mean, they're going to play more 12 personnel, I think, than probably Nick Sirianni envisioned. And in fact, he said that. He said, look, same thing Doug Peterson used to say. Yeah, he has admitted, the head coach has admitted, probably default to 11 personnel, 3 receivers as his base sort of system. But if your best players are tight ends, you put your best players out there.
Well, you know what, Johnny Mac, I am excited for, as I said, for Zach Ertz being a Philadelphia Eagle on this roster for a lot of reasons. For him as an individual, for who he is as an individual and what he means to this city. And then just from a pure football standpoint, I'm glad to see an old dude on this team. There are not very many veterans versus the youth movement that's on this roster.
Well, I mean, there are. You got to be. I mean, it happened. In fact, the veterans are the good players, But if you think about Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, I mean, that's still the foundation of this team. And add Zach Ertz, obviously, in that category. Those are the foundational players on this team. They're still the good players on this team. On the other hand, Howie Roseman, and I give him credit for this, to be honest, he was disciplined. And I talked about this a lot in the offseason. Is he going to be disciplined? Is he going to fall into that same trap and say, okay, we got a chance to be a little bit better than we expect. So let's keep Jordan Howard. Let's keep Richard Rodgers. Let's keep Hassan Ridgeway. Let's keep players like that. And, all of a sudden Tyree Jackson's on waivers and maybe somebody claims him and you don't have him for the long term. Some of the draft picks. So they were very disciplined. They understand they need to get younger. But as far as the foundational players on this team, and to be honest, that's one of the problems because they don't have many good players in that wheelhouse of 25 to 30. Most of their good players, really good players, are over 30. And that's a problem, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's actually where, and Johnny Mac, that's actually where I was going with that thought. Agree 100%. The skill level, the talent, and the good players do make up that nucleus. But there's 53 players on this roster. So the heavier percentage of those players fall in a real young category. And I just wonder how important it is to have a better mix of better players who are a little bit along the learning curve compared to what this roster looks like. And I don't say that in a negative way. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm optimistic right now, but I'm putting it out there to get your thoughts.
Well, I think the NFL, there's a lot of bleeding over when it comes to fandom, I think. And, they kind of get mixed up with NBA sort of thought processes or Major League Baseball thought processes. And the NFL is a little different. You don't have to tear something down to rebuild it. I talk about it all the time. It's statistically, you can go back year after year after year. There are worst to first in this league every single year because of two things: the parity, number one, and the unbalanced schedule. And look, you'll see it. You can. This is not a, I'll give the shout out to Xander as an Alabama, ex-Alabama student, Alabama devotee. There's no Alabamas versus the Citadel in the NFL. Everybody from the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers down to the one-win Jacksonville Jaguars, everybody's got good players. Everybody. And if you make a couple good decisions, make a number of good draft picks, a number of good free agent signings, you could be right back in the mix in 1 year. It doesn't have to be this long, lumbering process. And that's why you have to have a mix. And that's, it's a difficult tightrope to get across. When do you cut bait with the Zach Ertzes of the world? When do you cut bait with the Fletcher Coxes of the world? When do you pull the trigger on the younger players? Right now, the Eagles need more young developmental prospects that you could think can turn into stars. Right now, the Eagles probably have Miles Sanders, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, if you want to go down that road early as a rookie. But not a ton of those guys who you say, okay, if they continue to develop, they could be real difference makers. That's the problem with the Eagles right now. They don't have enough of those young players on the cusp of turning into the next Fletcher Cox or the next Jason Kelce.
Let's talk about the starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts. He spoke to the media today. Bring us inside that conversation. I'm quite sure there was conversation about Gardner Minshew. As a matter of fact, I think he spoke as well. So we'll talk about both. But let's start with Jalen Hurts and his first time meeting the media. I guess, right, since Minshew jumped on board and since and since the final 53 from yesterday, or the first 53, not the final, the first 53.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And obviously, so it was his first time as the official starting quarterback, although everybody knew that. And his first time speaking since Gardner Minshew was acquired. So the first time he got asked about Gardner, it was really a quick answer. So, I guess if you were watching it, you could sense he was a little bit bothered. But I think in a lot of ways, that's just Jalen's personality. I think, from somebody who's interviewed him a number of times, you got to ask the question the right way to get some kind of, answer that's going to be more than a sentence or two. And I asked him, what do you do as the leader of the quarterback room when you have a new player? What's your philosophy as far as embracing him? And then he talked a little bit more about Gardner Minshew. Look, I don't think I don't know how he could be happy about it, but I think he's going to handle the situation better than Carson Wentz did when he came along last year. I think it's just in his nature to handle things better. But I do think it is a signal, the last signal of many, that he understands he's got a small opportunity to take control of this team. And the only way he keeps it, and we kind of mentioned this yesterday on the show, the only way he keeps it is like Alex Singleton kept it. All right, they don't want you to play. They don't want you to play. They don't want you to play. You have to play. Take advantage of it. And if you play well, they won't take you off the field like they won't take Alex Singleton off the field now.
John, was Jalen asked about his receiving core, his weapons on offense?
Not today, not really. I mean, I think, the receivers, and we talked about, look, there's not a lot of depth there. And people hand-wringing about Travis Fulgham and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, John Hightower, who to keep. Well, guess what? They kept them all because they all cleared waivers. Travis cleared waivers. John Hightower cleared waivers. They're back on the practice squad. So, in essence, you have all three of them, J.J. obviously on the roster. Look, it's just I talk about this with Jody all the time, Birds 365. I put the over-under at 30. That's how many players generally get claimed after the initial cut down in this league. And then you go over-under. This year it was under. It was 27. Not one Eagles player got claimed elsewhere in this league. So they were able to add anybody they wanted to back to the practice squad.
Yeah, it looks like the training camp roster now that the practice squad has started to be popular. By the way, why is that? Why was there not a player claimed? Nobody wanted to take a flyer, for example, on Travis Fulgham, who did have a 5 games of great tape from a year ago.
No, I mean that, the proof is in the pudding. There's 31 teams that had an opportunity. They all passed. They didn't have any interest. Now, part of it that people don't understand, other organizations are just like the Eagles. They are working with their own players who are on their training camp rosters. They've been working with them since the spring and the summer, and they generally like their own guys, and they generally want to develop those guys. It happens in every city. The vast majority of your practice squad is guys who you just cut. And then and from the aspect of COVID as well, you have to wait a little bit longer to get new players in the building. So that affects things a little bit as well. But this is every year, Krause. The number is 25 to 35. That's how many guys will get claimed on waivers in this league after the cut down. And it fell right into that wheelhouse again, 27. And when you pick up a guy, if you go back to last year, the Eagles claimed Jason Huntley. They liked him in the draft. And they went back to their draft prep and they said, they were probably going to take him in the 5th or 6th round if they had the opportunity. They didn't have the opportunity when he got cut. They said, let's bring him in, take a look. That's generally what you're doing with waiver wire pickups. But most teams, the Eagles included, want to work with their own guys that they already had in the program. And now, so all the Travis Fulghams and Craig Jameses and all the hand wringing, they're all back anyway. And this is what usually happens.
Football 24/7 with John McMullen across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and do subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Big football fall of coverage here across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, including our new live post-game show with Derek Gunn, Mark Farzetta, Devin Caney, Lane Johnson, and John McMullen, plus a big announcement coming next week with another member of the 2021 Eagles jumping on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. More about that post-Labor Day. Very excited to announce that as we continue to deliver great content across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. John, Gardner Minshew also spoke today, and I think I saw it was either a tweet from you or it may have been from Dave Zangaro that Minshew said that Jalen Hurts was the first player to reach out to him after the trade.
Yeah, he did say that, and I tweeted it. Dave probably tweeted it as well because it was notable, and I think it was an example of sort of the leadership that Jalen Hurts kind of is natural to him, kind of exudes it. And it's one of those things that he just thinks about. He tries to engage everybody on the roster. Probably one of the strengths of his personality versus, say, Carson Wentz, who was here and wasn't necessarily a bad guy, wasn't a bad leader, but just didn't think that way. Didn't think like, I got to include everybody from one to my skill position players, my offensive line, all the way down to 53 and the practice squad. And that's what Jalen understands. He tries to get everybody engaged. And you can imagine if you're on the practice squad and you're a rookie player and the quarterback comes up to you and does something as simple as hello, and tries to engage you and tries to become friends with you. It's one of the real strengths of Jalen Hurts, but it's an intangible strength. So you can't put a number on it. You can't put an analytic on it. So a lot of people like to sweep it away and ignore it. I think it's one of the things that makes Jalen Hurts, gives Jalen Hurts a better opportunity to develop into a good quarterback in this league, because I've said it from the start, guys naturally gravitate towards him because he's that type of person. We've all seen it. When Joe Krause walks in a room, he lights up a room. Jalen Hurts does the same thing. Even though he's a little bit more understated in public. You watch his press conferences and he's very even keeled. I always say he's got the smoothest resting pulse rate of all time. Never gets too excited, never gets too low. But behind the scenes, people gravitate towards him.
Johnny Mac, just for curiosity, how does that work? Does Jalen already have Minshew's cell phone number in his cell phone, or does he ask the head coach, hey, can you send me Gardner's cell phone number? How does that work? Any idea?
Yeah, I mean, well, quarterbacks, they're very young. So I do not believe that Jalen and Gardner had a previous relationship. So, yeah, he probably texted Howie Roseman and said, hey, can I have Gardner's number? I want to welcome him to the Eagles, something of that nature. Or Nick Sirianni could have been the head coach. Yeah, that's generally how it happens. Now, as you get older, you sort of have the quarterback club and they all know each other. But these guys are still relatively young in their careers. But it just tells you, to go the extra mile, because it doesn't seem like a lot. But again, not every quarterback does that. Not every quarterback is going to go out of his way to welcome somebody. Now, if it's a wide receiver, running back, that's natural. You welcome your guys, so to speak, an offensive lineman. But if it's competition, I we joke. And by the way, I'm going to put this out there because it was a good joke and it got a few laughs. And it is sarcasm. So I want everybody to understand that. I said, well, Jalen Hurts has already talked to Gardner Minshew once, and that's more than Carson Wentz talked to Jalen Hurts.
I'll give you a chuckle on that as well, Johnny Mac. By the way, when Minshew spoke, he did speak to the media. Was he asked the inevitable question or not?
Yeah, of course. And yeah, he was on his best behavior. And I wrote a story on Gardner before he spoke this morning for Sports Illustrated. And he had one of the great lines. This is when he was in Jacksonville. He was on Chris Long's podcast, the ex-Eagle. Everybody remembers Chris. And he had a great line. Chris asked him about competition. And he said, because Trevor Lawrence was obviously coming in as the number 1 overall pick, and you and I had as much chance to start for the Jacksonville Jaguars, right, Krause, as Gardner Minshew. But he still said, he told Chris, and I can curse on the air here because it's YouTube. He told Chris, I haven't taken a shit preparing for this competition because number 2 is not acceptable. And that's his mentality.
Right.
And Urban Meyer called him a competitive maniac. That was his phrase. And this is a guy who I said was expecting to compete with the guy some Italian talent evaluators said is the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. And some go even farther. Some say Peyton Manning. Some even go all the way back to John Elway. My point being, Trevor Lawrence is super talented. I mean, ridiculously when it comes to a ceiling perspective. So you want to be number 1 with that guy on hand. Gardner Minshew, common sense says it's not going to be happy as a number 3. Now, he came in late, so the Eagles have that sort of luxury. Obviously, he's here 2 weeks before the start of the regular season. He's going to need time to ramp up. So you can lean on that crutch for a while, but he's not going to be happy as a 3rd-string quarterback. And that big personality with that great quote, he was on his best behavior today, but he did let it show a couple times. He let it slip, talking about playing horse with Nick Sirianni during his pre-draft process when Nick was in Indianapolis. He was also asked about the Eagles fans, and he made a quip on how kind they are. You could see his personality sort of just slightly peek out. But when they get when this fan base gets the full Gardner Minshew experience,
I can't wait for that.
They're going to fall in love with him, number 1. Now, we all know the backup quarterback is the most popular guy in town, typically when the starter's struggling. So, A, Jalen would have to struggle, number 1. And then, B, if he did get an opportunity, and I'm talking about Gardner Minshew, then you have to perform. Because everybody's going to love the personality, but you still got to perform if you get on the field.
And as of right now, he's still behind Joe Flacco. So, and that's the way the season's going to begin, with Joe Flacco as the backup, at least on this day.
Yeah, I would think Joe, and we haven't gotten to talk to Joe since the trade. I would think he's the most unhappy. I don't know that for a fact, but just from the standpoint of, look, Gardner Minshew is not going to be a 3rd-string quarterback at this stage of his career after what he accomplished in his first 2 years. I don't like the trade. I mentioned it on Birds 365. I don't like the trade because it's done in a vacuum. I always say, in a vacuum, it looks great. You brought in a talented kid who's better than Nick Mullins. But the real world isn't in a vacuum, and you bring in personalities, you bring in hurt feelings, you bring in guys looking over the shoulder. I don't think Howie learned a lot from what happened with Carson Wentz, to be honest.
Well, I'm going to remember the quote from yesterday's report here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, Football 24/7, with John McMullen. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do. And that is how I am going to approach the 2021 season.
That's how you should approach every season, because obviously, look, there are times, I'm not saying where guys don't tell the truth, and I get to talk to a lot of guys off the record when they are telling the truth, but there is a different framework when you're in public, when you're trying to advance a narrative, and that's why look, listen to what they say. I'm not saying don't listen to it, but watch what they do. It's far more important.
All right. Last couple of minutes with John McMullen, Football 24/7 across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Don't forget, again, a reminder to like, share, and stay with us as we transition into our version of Eagles coverage during the 2021 season. Again, the new live post-game show, a new show being announced post-Labor Day with a star on this Eagle roster. Very excited about that. We'll tease that out there. No, it's not Gardner Minshew, by the way, at least not yet. Although Johnny McMullen, maybe I have that conversation. Who knows?
Yeah, you got that personality, man. That's a personality you should look at, Krause. Get on the ground floor of that. You never know what's going to happen.
He might look good with a Kango hat on, by the way, brother. Never know. So that might be worth the chat. Last couple things, Johnny Mac. O-line with depth, top offensive line, top defensive line on this roster. A and B, solid if you're looking at the roster, looking at it on paper, and you're looking at it on the field, and you're looking at it from a core ability standpoint and everything else. The offensive line is solid. Lane, Brooks, Kelsey, back up to Kelsey, Sayamalu, and now Jordan Mailata. That's our starting offensive line. How deep into the season they're going to make it, I don't know. That's one hell of a front.
Yeah, I mean, that's a top 5 offensive line easily. Yeah. But I will say, and the Eagles have tremendous depth as well, especially with Landon Dickerson whenever he's going to be able to go. He's getting closer, obviously. So he's going to be available early in the season to be the top interior backup. You have Andre Dillard, who I know people are down on, but he's a really talented kid. And you never know when the light switch is going to go off. He's still there. Nate Herbig, you got to see last year. Jack Driscoll. Even Brett Toth, he was the guy who I said they got to make a roster spot for him because he was so good in the preseason. And they did. And they found a way to keep him. They traded Matt Pryor. They cut LaRaven Clark. They were able to get LaRaven back on the practice squad today. They had to keep Brett Toth, and to their credit, they did. But while I say that, and it's impressive, the depth, you went through it last year. With all due respect to all those players I just mentioned, they're not Lane Johnson. They're not Brandon Brooks. They're not Jason Kelsey. Those 3 guys are, in the case of Kelsey, you're talking borderline Hall of Famer, depending on how long he goes. Lane Johnson, I would say as well. Brandon Brooks has been the best right guard in football in between injuries. Look, those guys are different. And if they're not playing, even with impressive depth, you're taking significant hits. And on the defensive line, you mentioned as well, they're really deep at defensive end. Defensive tackle, not as deep as we thought they were going to be because they stuck with the youth. Marlon T., the rookie, probably didn't deserve to make this team. But again, they're trying to go younger. They were able to get Raequan Williams back to the practice squad. They didn't get Hassan Ridgeway on the practice squad, though. T.Y. McGill's still around. He's on the COVID list, so maybe he's back into it after 5 or 10 days or so. Not quite as deep as defensive tackle, but the starters, if Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave are out there, it's top 5 in the league, interior.
Good stuff from John McMullen here, Football 24/7 across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Johnny Mack riding out the storm down in South Philadelphia. What's left for the week, John? Is the team by the way, our team practice is still 70 minutes. Does that change? Do they do anything different now in terms of now that they're getting ready for game one?
Yeah, the biggest difference is we get kicked out after about 20 minutes. So the practices are closed to the media now, except for individual drill stretching. And so we basically get to watch the first 20 minutes of practice. And when they start team drills, we're kicked out because now it's CIA state surveillance stuff as you try to get ready for the regular season. So I don't know how long they practice, but they're never going longer than probably an hour and 45 minutes is the longest this team believes you should go at any point.
Right back tomorrow morning on Birds 365 with Jody Mack and Johnny Mack, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Again, like, share, subscribe, and stay with us throughout the 2021 football season. On behalf of John McMullen, I'm Joe Krause. See you next time. If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.